who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Yes, you. Yes, you. That's right, my little Jabberslythe. Oh, look at that. Oh, yes, yes, I love you too. Oh, aren't you so sweet? Such a sweet boy. Now go get him.
Hello, Ugly. It's your turn. No, not you, Torox. That thing. That thing. Not a thing exactly, but certainly a thing. The Jabberslythe is a Mortis engine for the Beastmen. What do I mean by that? It has a constant area of effect damage, direct damage around itself if it's in melee. Actually cannot target if leadership is higher than 50%, so weirdly enough, is slightly leadership conditional, does make it marginally less useful. I would say on the tier list of Mortis engines, this is probably actually the lowest, Faenchantress being first, actual Mortis engine being second, third being the Plague Furnace, and fourth being the Jabberslythe. I guess technically fifth you could put in like Helibron or the whatever, Warlock Engineer, but because of its leadership conditional, it's a little bit weird to use, but it still will get you a lot of value against lower tier stuff, especially over time. Here against Lizardmen, a lot of skinks in this build, might be able to generate some good value. I've also got a couple solar engines from Samurai Warrior, Quaddle up in the air, Oxyotl, Chameleon Stalkers, and Cohort Javs. Feral Troglodon as well, very nice to see. We've got some Ungor Raiders on my side. The Blood Brute already taking some heat from the solar engines. Jabberslythe moving in with Torox, got Ungor Raiders, Ungor Spears, Bray Shaman on his chariot, and a Cygor. So I decided, old school Cygor, we're going to go with the smorgasbord, you know, a sample platter, if you will, of Beastmen monsters in this particular replay. Got the Cygor at long range, mostly just going to be pounding skinks, but that's okay. Meanwhile, the Gorgon getting into combat. You've seen it all if you've watched my videos in combat several times. Here, though, you can see that these skinks, their leadership gets low, and they are going to start taking damage from that aura of madness. And due to Skink's low leadership, definitely can be very good against them. I also think other matchups for the Jabberslythe, if you watched my Vampire Counts Beastmen video recently, where I talked about the Gorgons, which this Gorgon currently getting absolutely bunker busted right now by all the missiles. Very painful situation. Mantle of Garrock does debuff his armor somewhat, but anyway, you would have seen in that video that the Jabberslythe was able to generate excellent value against Undead Chaff as well. I definitely think the Undead matchups, it might be hard to use them against Coast because of Coast missiles, but I think Tomb Kings possibly, and for sure Vampire Counts. Another one you may have seen is in my video about Torox. The Jabberslythe was draining out a lot of Greenskins infantry. I think that's another very good matchup. Any kind of infantry-based matchups that don't have too many missiles, kind of precluding the Dwarfs, I think. The Jabberslythe is going to be very effective here. It's matched up mono-a-mono against the Quaddle. I say mono-a-mono. It's not going to be a fair fight because the Bray Shaman will come in here. But Torox getting lit up. He's going to pop that brass body and move in as well for a nasty 3-on-1 fight. The Jabberslythe is also, we'll do a little bit of testing. I'll show you guys a quick testing replay, as I did with the Gorgon after the fact. But it's somewhat, like, it's close. It's slightly below, I would say, Cambrian War Sphinx. For those of you guys with a lot of monster experience will know that's a pretty good monster. This guy is basically slightly worse, but also has a Mortis engine attached. Here with the poison, that repeated kind of diving attack animation, which it has to be said, Gorgon's attack animations are very good. Somehow pinning the Quaddle here. Gets Mantle of Garrock to put him to 600 weapon strength. And what? Let's see if I can get his card to stay up here. 77 attack, very impressive stuff. Just gonna pound the Quaddle back and forth here and not allow it to get back up in the air. A little bit weird how slow its ground speed is, honestly. I think needs to be looked at. But anyway, Solar Engine does make contact, debuffing the standard melee attack and defense. Blood Brute here is going after the Feral Troglodon, trying to chase it off after beating it up pretty severely. So things are looking pretty good. Some of the Skinks have made their way back and are engaging the Cygor here. Oh, Cygor, a lot of people are going to forget about you, but still an incredibly strong monster. Super strong anti-infantry and anti-cavalry missile monster, and the Regiment of Renown still has a hard snare, which is very competitive. Beastmen just, I mean, they went from being one of the worst, like, not the worst, I mean, they do have monsters. It's better than, say, the Empire or Bretonnia or Dwarfs, but kind of beyond those three, they were one of the worst monster factions in the game, to be honest. Now they are one of possibly the top 5. I mean, the Gorgon's very good, Cygor's very good, Jabberslythe is very good as well. Jabberslythe here has got some pretty good value, not only fighting other monsters, but also draining some decently priced skink infantry. You can see 144 kills there, and more value mounting has paid for itself already. So we're going to move in for the final engagement here. Oxyotl doing some really nice damage to the Brave Shaman. Brave Shaman likewise charging out Oxyotl pretty well. Our harmonic convergence there might make a little bit of a difference from this Heaven Skink on foot here. The Blood Brute and Taurox, oh yeah, just in melee combat against the Solar Engines. Quaddle comes down to fight the Jabberslythe once again in the background. Love the attack animations of the Quaddle. I know I said that in my video yesterday. Looks like the Feral Troglodon's even back for some fun, so the Jabber's just about to go down and might actually die here. Come on, kill the horrible creature. Do us all a favor. Do it, Troglodon. I know you can't see. You've got to be able to smell him. And it looks like he is. Finishes off the Jabber. Probably deserves it. But thankfully for me, I mean, I'm far enough ahead on the balance of power right now. Like, yes, these two single entities are still very low, but hey, guess what? There's a full health Cygor rumbling in with still a tiny bit of rocks to throw. And obviously, you know, 450 armor-piercing weapon strength, 44 attack, only 17 defense. Not the best monster in melee, but certainly can give some extra punch. And given that everything else is so tattered here, yeah, it's just a lot to have to deal with. The Quaddle unfortunately shatters there. We do shatter the Solar Engine. Blood Brute Behemoth actually gets routed. But Taurox going to be coming in. Got a handful of Ungor Spearmen also in the periphery. There are a few Skinks coming in as well. Mostly the support situation advantage goes to the Lizardmen, actually, but their support units are all still a little bit far away. And, of course, Terror is going to be an issue for them, certainly in the late game. Oxyotl has been finished off when I wasn't looking, which is somehow appropriate, but Taurox going to finish off the Solar Engines here. And that'll be army losses, I believe. Probably. Maybe not. Maybe we still need to finish the Skink Priest. Nope, there it goes. So even though the Jabber took a dive there, it still absolutely paid for itself. Yeah, almost 2,000 value again. Draining, this time not even from, you know, undead healing and extra bodies and everything. Just straight up draining Skinks and fighting kind of lower tier monsters in melee. Or I should say lower tier melee monsters. They're missile monsters primarily, so they're not really meant to be fighting in melee as much, but still, good value against all of them. You can see all the, I mean, Solar Engines, I think they're 1,200 now, which is probably pretty appropriate, to be honest. One of them does still pay for themselves. The rest of them, though, I mean, they do pretty good value, but we're able to limit them somewhat. And then, of course, the Skinks. So, one of the Skinks, this is actually the best performance I think I've seen out of Stalkers. Almost 1,000 value on them. I'm not sure, maybe they threw their precursor weapons at an expensive target. I don't know. It's kind of weird to make these guys pay for themselves, but there you go. Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. Oxyotl definitely pays for himself. It's not too hard for him to do that. But on my side, Cygor is just kind of here until the late game. That presence in and of itself is enough. Blood Brute Behemoth, once again, amazing value fighting monsters. Super, super strong anti-monster tool. So you cannot monster mash the Beastmen and just abuse them in that way anymore, because they now have the tools to deal with it. And likewise, they can also play the attrition game quite well. And I haven't used this guy against the Skaven. I think the Skaven may have enough missile pressure. Although Beastmen, certainly the mobility, if you kind of build around it, right? Like with these big monsters, I don't know if you really need a Gorgon against Beastmen. Although if they go full Clan Molder monster, you might. But at the very least, Jabberslythe against Skaven is going to be very good at draining out all their models. And if you kind of build around it, right, with like a lot of Centaurs, Hounds, and have a very mobile attacking build, where you're able to, at the very least, occupy their missile units or threaten them in such a way that they're not just teeing off on the Jabberslythe, I think he could be very good against the Skaven as well. Bretonnia, potentially. Any of the more chaff infantry-oriented factions where you just want to kind of deal mass damage in an AoE to them. Dark Elves is an interesting one as well. Dark Elves' missile pressure is pretty intense up close, but also their units are relatively low HP, and they also tend to bring the greatest numbers in comparison to the other elves. So this is actually a kind of specialist matchup I might consider. In general, actually, thinking about it, elves' low HP does potentially make them a vulnerable target, but they also, all the elven factions have decent range pressure, ranging from very decent to very good, I should say, in the case of the Wood Elves. So yeah, it could be tricky to use this guy. He does have a little bit of missile resistance, 15%, and there's the Regiment of Renown, of course, which, you know, given the Mortis Engine effect, you don't really get a lot of extra damage on that from the Regiment of Renown status, but he does come with, rather than Poison, Armor Sundering, which again is like, Beastmen have good enough AP that I almost think it's better to just take the basic version. But yeah, he does also come with Searing Bile Blood, Spurting Bile Blood on the basic one, Searing Bile Blood on the upgraded one. Maybe does a little bit more damage, and there's armor rather than applies poison. Poison, again, if you haven't heard, has been nerfed down from 20% to 15% on all of its effects. But anyway, yeah, like I said, I do have a little bit of testing, and let's go ahead and get to that just quickly after I compare kind of the reason why I wanted to test these two units specifically with Samurai Warrior is because with Tomb Kings, I mean, looking at it on paper, I was like, anti-infantry, kind of like meh stats, but like decent overall. Looked to me a lot like the Chemerian War Sphinx. Like, obviously, the Jabberslythe with the Mortis effect you would expect to be weaker overall. It does not have the Howdah, obviously, which is kind of like a very, very weak Mortis effect, if you think about it. But still, the Chemerian War Sphinx, more armor, more HP, just a little bit better stats overall, weapon strength, much better charge, it must be said, although the charge animations are not quite as bombastic, let's say. 2 extra melee attack, a little bit less melee defense, but again, pretty comparable also in terms of price. So let's go ahead and get to that testing replay, and we'll be right back. And here we are, once again, Glacial Lake, of course. The crucible of testing for Total War Warhammer. You can see the bowmen on the back here already teeing off. Are those actual Tomb Guard? Interesting, I never noticed. Here we go, we're going to get these monsters mashing. Let's see the Armor Sundering versus Poison. I don't know which one's actually going to be better here. But right off the bat, the Vorbergland Broodmother, which is another absolute mouthful of a Regiment of Renown name that I'm never going to remember. ROR Yabber here is actually losing initially, and we would expect with the Chemerian War Sphinx to having higher charge bonus that it would win kind of on the initial phase here, on the initial engagement. We're going to actually pop this into fast forward. Don't want to take too long on this, but you can see the bursts of bile blood there, the kind of green diarrhea looking effect that poops up underneath the Jabberslythe there, and then you can see the slightly brighter green one is for the Vorbergluber Brood blah blah. Yeah, that thing. And again, we would expect that the Chemerian War Sphinx would win most of these. Maybe the Jabberslythe might be able to win 1 or 2. Like right here, it does look like the Jabber's probably going to win that. Regiment of Renown looks like is actually going to lose, so I don't know. You know, the Armor Sundering versus Poison, I really think that, don't get me wrong, Armor Sundering's nice, and in niche builds, you could potentially kind of stack that, maybe utilize Ungol Raiders as well, try and just mass shoot something down with cheap Archer Fire. You know, you've got Soul Blight for an armor debuff as well. You could use this spell to stack on top, but, you know, it's not really great. And I would say Poison on the base one is just as good in some situations, if not better in others. And again, Armor Sundering has its kind of niche applications, but trading Poison for Armor Sundering is not the best trade-off in the world. Anyway, what I'm trying to say with all of that is I think the basic version is the one you'll see. I don't think there's a lot of reason to take the ROR in multiplayer. Unless, again, you're trying to do something specific and cute, trying to get some cute synergy or something. But as we see here, the Jabberslythe actually does win like 2 out of 5, potentially. This one here is going to be very close. But I was expecting it to win maybe 1 out of 5. Interestingly enough, Torox actually comes in and just kills Cetra too. I don't know if y'all caught that in the background. etc. did not use spells on himself, but there you go. And yeah, it does look like the Jabber will win. So again, limited sample size. Really, to get a true depiction of this, you'd want to run this simulation like 1,000 times probably. But from this very limited sample size, it does appear that the Jabbers do trade like maybe 40-30% of the time into War Sphinxes. And what more, I guess the demonstration is that for those of you familiar with monsters already in the game, it's about on the same power level as a War Sphinx with the kind of worse than Plague Furnace Mortis engine attached to it. I don't know, does that make sense? Maybe it's a little bit complicated, but anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thank you again so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.